In the preview for episode 168, we once again witnessed the intense battle between Si Fanqi and Yao Hai, with stunning visuals that heightened the anticipation. But you may be wondering, why is it that a king immortal cannot instantly kill a marquee immortal? The reason lies in the nature of a warrior who has reached the marquee immortal level. Their soul imprint has already been deeply rooted in every single cell of their divine body. As long as the soul imprint remains intact, even if their divine body is completely destroyed, a marquee immortal can repeatedly reconstruct it, making them virtually impossible to truly kill. This is the very foundation of why immortal level beings are so difficult to eliminate. One must use their own immortal divine power to forcibly destroy the opponent's soul imprint. There is no way to end them unless one is highly skilled in soul attacks. This is what is meant by burning the divine body to kill the enemy, which sacrificing one's own divine power to annihilate the enemy's imprint. However, this process also damages the caster's own imprint, with the cost depending on both parties' power levels and the size of their divine bodies. If one's strength is insufficient and they expend too much divine power, their imprint might become incomplete, causing them to fall into a deep slumber. After that, their divine body would need to absorb cosmic energy over an incredibly long time, millions or even billions of years, before a potential revival. Even if slumber is avoided, if the divine body is severely damaged, it would take a massive amount of resources to return to peak condition. Thus, immortal warriors tend to prefer suppressing or sealing their enemies rather than burning divine power to kill them outright. Of course, if the strength gap is overwhelming, then one can annihilate an opponent without even burning divine power. Figures such as King Jinyan, Venerable Nine Swords, and the Primal Chaos City leader could easily kill someone like Yao Hai. In the face of absolute power, quantity eventually becomes quality. Even a microscopic soul imprint cannot escape total annihilation when struck with sufficient force. If the imprint suffers serious damage, even a marquee immortal will meet their demise. Though Si Fanqi is not as powerful as King Jinyan, Venerable Nine Swords, or the Primal Chaos City leader, as a king immortal who possesses the teleportation ability, he would only need to expend less than 5% of his divine power to kill Yao Hai. Even if the cost rose to 10%, it would have no substantial impact on his overall strength. Naturally, Si Fanqi's delay in killing Yao Hai isn't just because he's reluctant to spend divine power. The real reason is that there are varying degrees of strength even within the same rank, whether marquee or king immortal. Without unleashing their full strength, it's nearly impossible to accurately assess an opponent's true level based on appearances alone. For instance, the power difference between an low-tier marquee immortal and a peak level 1 is roughly equivalent to the strength of 800-fold of a pinnacle world master. And for immortals, the limits of their power often reflect how stable their divine body is, where the more stable it is, the harder it is to erase the soul imprint. Therefore, if Si Fanqi can eliminate Yao Hai without burning his divine body, that's ideal. But if he can't, he will still spare no effort to complete the mission. After all, killing Yao Hai is an order from the Virtual Universe Company, and as a member of an affiliated race, he must obey. Additionally, the presence of the Shaoluo flower is another major reason why this battle drags on. Typically, before its master becomes a king immortal, a plant-type auxiliary lifeform is stronger than its master, and this is what justifies its existence. Thus, it's highly likely that Yao Hai's Shaoluo flower is an immortal-level plant lifeform. Otherwise, releasing a world master-level plant while on the losing side would serve no purpose. It's worth mentioning that the Shaoluo flower is not inferior to the Moyun vine in terms of species quality. High-grade plants like this, once they become immortal, often reach marquee immortal level strength. And because of their massive size, even if a single vine only has the power of a marquee immortal, their combined force can rival a human king immortal. Even more troublesome, the Shaoluo flower specializes in devouring energy, which allows it to assist Yao Hai in depleting the opponent's divine power during battle. Because of this, it not only poses a real threat to Si Fanqi's marquee immortal subordinates but can also hinder Si Fanqi himself in direct combat. Under such conditions, without burning his divine body, it's nearly impossible for Si Fanqi to completely wipe out Yao Hai. So, are you curious whether the early appearance of the Shaoluo flower by the animation production team will affect Luo Feng's smooth acquisition of the Loke Divine Liquid that I mentioned in the previous spoiler video? In fact, in this world where the strong reign supreme, there is an unspoken rule: all relics of the slain belong to the slayer. If Yao Hai carried the Loke Divine Liquid, then it rightfully belongs to Si Fanqi, since he was the one who killed Yao Hai. Of course, under normal circumstances, a king immortal wouldn't care about the possessions of a marquee-level immortal. However, the Golden Horn tribe is merely a vassal race under the human race, far less wealthy than the humans. For Si Fan Chi, the relics of a human marquee-level immortal are already quite enticing. However, in order to ensure that the plot development does not deviate from the original setting, the production team is likely to arrange for all relics to be submitted for centralized collection, to be examined and identified personally by Luo Feng. After all, Luo Feng is the overall commander of this mission. There's also another possibility: the Lok Divine Liquid was never on Yao Hai to begin with. After Yao Hai is killed, Luo Feng still needs to travel to another base to personally eliminate several spies who possess first to third tier world master strength. By simply arranging for one of them to carry 2 pinnacle 9th tier world master level plant lifeforms, the Lok Divine Liquid can be reasonably hidden on their body and eventually fall into Luo Feng's hands. You might be wondering, just how powerful is Luo Feng now? Can he kill a world master level powerhouse? In fact, under a normal growth trajectory, low-tier world masters typically do not comprehend the original laws to the level of the 6th level of the Heavenly Bridge. Yet Luo Feng has long cultivated Heaven-Tearing Claw and has comprehended the laws far beyond the peak of the 9th level, even reaching the threshold of the 10th level. With over 3,000 times the amplification of his spiritual energy and the boost of Blood River power, his overall strength is already comparable to the peak of the 10th level. From a law comprehension perspective, although Luo Feng's human body is currently only a 9th tier domain master, his overwhelming advantage in understanding the original laws is enough to bridge the gap in raw power between him and a world master. Therefore, when facing an ordinary low-tier world master, Luo Feng can almost defeat them in a single strike. Even more astonishingly, Luo Feng now possesses 2 complete sets of soldier-grade armor, and if fully activated through his human body, he can unleash an attack equivalent to the combined strike of around 90 pinnacle world masters. In other words, though he is merely a 9th tier domain master, he already has the terrifying strength to face about 90 pinnacle world masters head-on. Don't forget, comprehension at the 10th level of the Heavenly Bridge is already the threshold to becoming an immortal. In the primordial void space, those strongest among the world masters are often capable of sweeping aside thousands of ordinary world masters. Once they break through, they can directly ascend to become a marquee immortal. Of course, Luo Feng cannot reveal his true strength yet, since in the eyes of others, he is still just a domain master. Back to the plot. After Si Fan Chi successfully kills Yao Hai, no one expected that an immortal-level Zerg Hive would suddenly descend upon Emperor Star through the divine kingdom of one of its immortal servants. You must understand, Yao Hai was a sole slave of an immortal-level Zerg queen. Once he perished, the queen would immediately sense it. And in racial wars, there is no such thing as pity for the weak or avoid collateral damage. Since they lost a marquee-level immortal spy, they might as well launch a surprise attack and unleash revenge in the most brutal way possible. The arrival of an immortal-level Zerg Hive is a devastating threat to any universe country. It can destroy thousands of life-bearing planets in an instant, turning billions of lives into dust. Though such revenge has no strategic value, it's immensely destructive, meant solely to vent rage. After all, if such massive slaughter draws the attention of a universe venerable, or even a universe master descending in person, not even a Zerg queen can escape death. However, if the target is a universe fleet on a mission, the implications change entirely. Such teams may include important human figures or geniuses, like Luo Feng. If they can seize the opportunity to kill him, it would be a huge victory for the Zerg. Eliminating a potential future powerhouse is the same as erasing a future threat to their entire race. Of course, such a surprise attack can't last long. They must complete the battle and withdraw before a universe venerable or universe master arrives. Otherwise, the only thing waiting for them will be annihilation. Although it was merely a brief assault, to Luo Feng and the fleet involved in eliminating the traitors, it felt like the end of the world, utterly terrifying. If not for Si Fan Chi mastering the secret art of teleportation and being well-versed in escape techniques, even Luo Feng might not have survived. Now you may be wondering, aside from the soul attack displayed by Yao Hai, what other terrifying combat methods does the Zerg possess? In fact, they can be categorized into 2 types. The first is pure energy attacks without the infusion of law power. These are often used in ambushes, especially deadly against enemies who haven't mastered teleportation. The Zerg Queen controls a massive number of warriors, converging their energy into a single point to unleash a laser cannon like concentrated blast. Though it resembles a laser cannon, its destructive power is far beyond anything mundane. Because the attack targets a fixed area, it poses no threat to those capable of teleportation. After all, no one would foolishly stand in place and take such a deadly blast head-on. But why say only those who can teleport need not fear such an attack? It's because the energy strike moves at near light speed, giving ordinary warriors no time to react. Even hiding in a high-grade spaceship wouldn't help. The terrifying shockwave alone, even just its aftershock, could instantly obliterate a universe-level warrior. Because of this, when the Zerg Hive suddenly descended and launched an energy strike without warning, the nearby universe fleet stationed at Emperor Star was caught completely off guard. Soldiers were vaporized into ashes, and the casualties were severe. In particular, the universe-level fighters were entirely wiped out, with zero chance of survival. You might then ask, why didn't Fan Chi immediately use teleportation to evacuate the entire fleet from danger? The reason is simple, he couldn't. And that brings us to the Zerg's second type of attack, law-based assaults. In fact, for a Zerg queen to break through to the immortal level is even more difficult than for a space beast. This means that every Zerg queen who has reached the immortal level possesses astonishing comprehension of higher laws, often comparable to the peak tier of human king immortals. They typically master multiple space-based divine abilities, and it's not uncommon for them to use both teleportation and spatial lockdown. Thus, upon sensing the presence of a king immortal at the scene, the Zerg queen immediately activated a spatial lockdown, completely suppressing spatial fluctuations in the area and preventing anyone from teleporting away. In this situation, Fan Chi had no choice but to brace himself and face the onslaught of swarming Zerg warriors head-on. Worse still, once a Zerg queen has mastered law-based attacks, she can bestow them upon her subordinate warriors. In other words, these attacks are not exclusive to the queen, they can be delegated. However, to unleash such power, the queen must expend significant mental effort to control her warriors, which limits the number she can empower. Generally, no more than 10,000 warriors can wield law-based attacks at once. Even so, facing thousands of Zerg warriors empowered with law-based abilities and with strength comparable to human king immortals, Fan Chi found himself locked in a desperate battle. Fortunately, he had cultivated profound expertise in escape techniques, and after withstanding several assaults, he finally managed to break free of the spatial lockdown. Once out of the lockdown zone, Fan Chi immediately used teleportation to flee. After all, in the vastness of the universe, if a strong warrior is determined to escape, a few quick teleports are enough to shake off any pursuer. Even one of equal power would struggle to track him again. Now, you might be wondering, since Luo Feng possesses a Zerg queen named Irina, why didn't he summon her to help resist the Zerg army? The answer is simple, there's too large a gap in rank. It is worth mentioning that only an immortal-level Zerg queen can create immortal-level Zerg warriors. And at present, Irina's limit is merely the ability to nurture Zerg warriors at the peak of the World Master level. What's more, she has only just begun building her legion. To reach the scale of the million-strong army Luo Feng envisions, it will take at least several hundred more years. For now, she is simply unable to play a decisive role. You might be wondering, since a World Master level Zerg queen can create World Master level Zerg warriors, and an Immortal level queen can produce Immortal level warriors, does that mean a Universe Venerable or even Universe Master level Zerg queen could also create warriors of the same level? If that were true, wouldn't millions of Universe Venerable level Zerg warriors be able to sweep across the universe, invincible and unstoppable? The reality is far from that. The creation of Zerg warriors by a Zerg queen is heavily dependent on resources. For instance, if Irina wished to form an army of 1,000,000 World Master level warriors, she would need to consume an enormous amount of World Master level Zerg remains as raw materials. Under normal circumstances, acquiring such a vast quantity of corpses would be impossible. That's why, when Irina saw the massive stockpile of remains Luo Feng had prepared for her, she was utterly shocked. Her expression alone made it clear, she had never possessed such abundant resources before. Typically, a World Master level Zerg queen constructs her army according to a fixed structure. For example, 10,000 Universe level warriors, 100 Domain Master level warriors, and 1 World Master level commander. Based on the quantity of available resources and the queen's skill in crafting, she may be able to create hundreds, thousands, or even tens of thousands of such legions. Similarly, Immortal level Zerg queens command multiple legions with Immortal level warriors as their commanders. However, creating Universe Venerable level Zerg warriors is virtually impossible. First, the required resources are astronomical. Second, they are also unable to obtain a massive amount of Zerg remains like Luo Feng. Moreover, the top combat power on the extraterritorial battlefield is no more than Invincible King Immortal level, which is far from the resource level required to support higher level warriors. Without Zerg remains of the corresponding level, creating Universe Venerable level warriors is entirely out of the question. Of course, there is still a fundamental difference between universe venerable level Zerg queens and immortal level ones. The former not only grasp higher level laws but can also control vastly larger numbers of Zerg warriors. For instance, commanding hundreds of millions of universe-level Zerg warriors is an easy task for them. This reflects the Zerg's long-standing combat doctrine, tide of insects tactics. Their strategy emphasizes overwhelming numbers rather than honing the individual strength of each unit. This approach proves incredibly effective in warfare. As seen in the crisis Luo Feng faced, his entire universe fleet suffered devastating casualties. Though he had long understood the brutal nature of interspecies war, witnessing countless innocent humans die and their beautiful homes reduced to ruins in an instant still filled him with seething rage. That's why, during the mission to eliminate World Master level traitors, he didn't even summon his Yenshin armament. Instead, he tore them apart one by one with his bare claws, venting his fury. After all, if it weren't for these traitors sowing chaos from within, so many innocents wouldn't have perished in the Zerg tide. Well, that's all for this video. Thanks for watching this video. Wish you a wonderful day.